Hey everyone, today we're continuing What If Team Aqua sponsored May. If you haven't seen part 2, it can be found on Dex's channel, linked to the series playlist in the iCard, and while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe to both channels, so you never miss out on a part.
This story is also part of the GSA Extended Universe, so be sure to check out Ronin Charizard and plus Ultraman's What If Giovanni sponsored Ash series, since you never know who might show up in a connected story. You can also find where this story fits into the GSA timeline by checking out the GSA Full Story playlist. But with that said, let's get on to the what if. May's face is stony as Archie ends their call. Sure, she has done bad things for Team Aqua before, having stolen at her boss's command more than once, but she's never kidnapped anyone. However, she's not given long to think as moments later an email comes through revealing the identity of the man she is supposed to abduct. Her blood runs cold. It's Professor Birch. She can't do this, she just can't. Not to her dad's best friend. She still remembers visiting him in Little Root Town with her parents and Max when she was little, or having him over to her house on birthdays. He's part of her family, but so is Max, and if she's gonna find him, she needs Archie's help, which means, like it or not, she has to do this. Throughout this period of mental turmoil, May has been nervously fiddling with Swampert and Swablu's Pokeballs. But as she hardens her resolve, so does she still her movements, bracing herself for the job ahead. If she is to do this, she cannot allow her feelings to get the better of her. She needs to be strong for Max. Stepping into the twilit street of Fall Arbor once more, May heads southwest towards the place where the email said Professor Birch would be, the home of a man named Takao Cosmo, a fellow Pokemon professor. Professor Cosmo's house is unremarkable, being no different from any of the others in the neighborhood, though May has no trouble recognizing it as it's the one with Isabelle crouching on the roof. When the tactical commander hears May approach, she whips her head around, but upon seeing who it is, drops back down into the garden and beckons her companion over. May does not need to be told why Isabelle's here, likely to ensure that she doesn't back down, and so instead asks why she was on the roof. In her usual terse manner, Isabelle responds that she was just casing the joint and has identified the best entry and exit point is the kitchen window. If they break through the window at the same time, it will prevent the target from accurately determining their numbers, and she should be able to get a clean shot to the head with her Remoraid, stunning him before he can bring forth any of his own Pokemon. As for Cosmo, May will have to deal with him, though since he doesn't matter to Archie, she can afford to be a little more lethal with force if she's afraid of him retaliating. Isabelle clearly has more to say, but May stops her right here, saying that can be plan B. Since she knows Professor Birch personally, she figured maybe she could talk to him first and see if she can convince him to come with them. After all, Archie did say she could approach this mission at her own discretion. Scowling a little that her plan is being tossed out, Isabelle gives a taciturn flick of her head, as if welcoming the girl to try, while simultaneously expressing doubt in her chances of success. Honestly, May isn't entirely sure this will work either, but if there's a way she can avoid hurting her old family friend, she has to try. Rising to her feet, May takes another deep breath, then exhaling through her nose. She steps up and knocks on the front door.
A moment later, the door swings open to reveal a man May doesn't know who must be Professor Cosmo, while behind him stands the burly build of Birch. Upon seeing who it is, the tree-named professor's face splits into a broad grin, and without hesitation, he urges her to come inside, introducing her to his friend. Meekly, May accepts, passing through the threshold and shaking Professor Cosmo's outstretched hand. Her eyes then find their way back to Birch, who looks relatively unchanged from the last time she saw him, which was the day he gave her Swampert, and despite her promise to stay strong, the daughter of Petalburg can't help but feel a mix of emotions such as affection, nostalgia, and guilt well up inside her. Something of this must show on her face, as concern crosses the professor's, with him asking if she's alright. Briefly, May tries to nod, and say she's fine, but when she opens her mouth, all that comes out is a guttural sob, and before she can stop herself, tears run down her cheeks. Rushing to pull her into a parental hug, Birch adopts a comforting tone as he asks what's wrong. For a moment, May cannot speak, overcome by emotion, but with great effort, she is eventually able to choke out that everything is wrong. Her parents are gone, her home burned down, and she lost Max. And worst of all, it's all her fault. Still holding the girl close, Birch is tempted to say that he can hardly imagine May and her water type are to blame for that tragic act of arson, but holds his tongue, recognizing that what May needs most in that moment is for someone to be on her side. And so crouching slightly to bring them eye level with each other, he asks if there is anything he can do to help. Once more May hesitates, then with a ragged breath she nods. Smiling encouragingly, Birch asks what she needs, though he is surprised with the answer. May for her part is completely honest, telling her surrogate uncle about Archie's assignment to kidnap him so that he can do some job for Team Aqua. Concern in his voice, Birch asks what May's doing hanging around with Archie and Team Aqua, and once more May hides nothing, explaining how the Aqua boss promised to help her find Max so long as she does his bidding. Furrowing his brow and frowning a little, Birch asks if completing this mission will help her find Max, and when May nods, he allows himself to smile once more, saying that settles things. He's been kidnapped. Blinking in confusion, May asks what Birch means, with the brown-haired man encouragingly replying that the first stage of her mission is a success. She's captured him, and he will put up no resistance, so all she has to do is bring him to the rendezvous point. That's the job she has to do for her boss, right? At last, understanding blossoms in May's eyes, and in a small voice full of gratitude she thanks the professor. Still smiling, Birch tells her to think nothing of it, urging her to lead the way. To the side, Professor Cosmo looks on in stunned silence, unable to comprehend what exactly is going on, but with a wink, Birch tells his friend not to worry about it, apologizing about his sudden departure, but that's what happens when you're abducted. Still flustered, Cosmo asks if he should call Officer Jenny, but with an easy grin, Birch says that's hardly necessary, though come to think of it, he might need to report his kidnapping at some point to avoid suspicion being cast on himself. When he does, he might as well do it in person at the police station, and should he do so, it might just be worth taking the scenic route, if Cosmo catches his drift.
On these enigmatic words of parting, May and Birch step out of the house, with May awkwardly telling Cosmo it was nice to meet him, while Isabel gawks that her companion was able to somehow talk Birch into coming willingly. Spotting the redhead, Birch greets Isabel by name, adding in a pleasant tone that he hasn't seen her in ages. Scowling deeper than before, Isabel doesn't dignify this with an answer, instead telling May to follow her as she directs the girl and their quote-unquote prisoner up a street leading to Route 113. Night has well and truly fallen now, and this is to the Aqua duo's benefit as they can make use of the cover of darkness. However, despite the gloom, as May leaves the city limits for the wild beyond, she spots a pair of glowing red eyes watching her from atop a nearby cliff. May can't make out anything else about the watcher from their high angle, and when the mysterious red-eyed creature realizes it has been spotted, it vanishes once more into the night. However, the girl can't shake the feeling that whatever it was waiting for her. Ever the taskmaster, Isabel pushes for them to walk through the night, but rather logically, Birch points out that doing that could result in one of them being injured, which in the long term would slow their pace exponentially, so it would be wiser to make camp and resume when the sun comes up. Isabel clearly doesn't like taking Birch's advice for whatever reason, but thankfully her pragmatism outweighs her ego, with the tactical commander accepting Birch's suggestion and stopping for the night, after only an hour and a half of walking. After setting up camp, Isabel's first priority is the same as always, tend to her Pokemon, with the redhead bringing out both Ludicolo and Remoraid. This piques Birch's interest, and in a conversational tone, he asks Isabel where her Mudkip is. This surprises May, who has never seen or heard any indication that Isabel has a Mudfish starter of her own. And it seems that this is how Isabel wants it, as she abrasively tells Birch to cram it. At first, the professor is a little taken aback by this response, but being both an intelligent and perceptive man, it doesn't take him long to connect the dots, and with a slightly bowed head, he gives his apologies and his condolences.
Meanwhile, back in Mossdeep City, Max is just finishing up his conversation with Tate and Liza and preparing to head for the Pokemon Center so he can heal Chinchou and Blaziken. However, before he can say his final word of parting to the twins, a figure makes his way through the gym doors. Assuming it's that pompadour jerk from before, Max scowls at the newcomer, only for his expression to change when he sees the visitor is none other than Maxie, now all patched up from his run-in with Staraptor. When the Magma Boss sees his young protege, he beckons him over, asking how his gym battle went, and with a smile, Max shows Maxie his newly acquired mind badge. Returning the fond smile, the red-haired man praises that he never doubted Max's victory for a second. He then turns his focus to the gym leaders, saying that if they would indulge him, he would like a moment of their time. Grinning, Tate says if it's a battle he wants, he's afraid Max will have to wait until tomorrow, since they just had their last match of the day. However, Maxie smiles placidly that he's not here to battle. He then introduces himself as Maxie, chairman of the Devon Corporation Board of Directors. friends, and a scientist like their parents. Curiously, Tate asks if Maxie knows their parents, with the redhead replying that he once attempted to convince their father to accept a position at Devon, but alas, Jin's dreams were always out in space, while his interests are more terrestrial. Smiling, Liza says she's sure their dad would love to see him, with the Magnum boss giving an appreciative nod and saying he would very much enjoy a chance to catch up with his old associate and see what he's working on these days. The remainder of the discussion continues in this fashion, with Maxie agreeing to join Tate and Liza on a tour of the Mossdeep Space Center tomorrow morning, and so when it comes time to part, there are smiles on all faces.
It is only when Max and Maxie are alone as they make their way to the Pokemon Center that the Magma boss speaks to his disciple. With a smile, he tells Max that he did his part magnificently, but the boy admits that he really didn't do anything. Shaking his head, Maxie replies that on the contrary, his skillful battling and charming presence put the twins in a receptive state so he could get what he wanted from them, a way into the Space Center. Maxie then continues that though Max doesn't know it yet, he has done a tremendous service for Team Magma by getting him this, since Tate and Liza's grandparents were former guardians of the red and blue orbs, ancient tools created to control Groudon and Kyogre. Though his agents have confirmed that the grandparents no longer have the orbs, Maxie has to wonder if they might have passed it down to the children, or at least they may have some insight as to the orb's hiding place. Smiling at the thought of being helpful to Maxie, Max offers to assist him in his search. With a slight shake of the head, Maxie replies that this will be a highly dangerous infiltration, so he could not ask his young friend to risk himself for his sake. Not only that, but Max still has his gym challenge to complete, with there being a gym on the neighboring Izabi Island. He'd hate to hold him back. Thanking Maxie for his consideration, Max at last steps into the Pokemon Center, with his mentor following behind. After handing Blaziken and Chinchou over to Nurse Joy, May and Maxie take a seat in the reception area to wait. Looking up at the small TV mounted between the wall and the ceiling, Maxie grimaces when he sees what channel is on, Hoenn TV, Team Aqua's prize propaganda mill. And there's the man himself, Archie, spewing some dreck that he has convinced the masses constitutes as news. Then something interesting catches Maxie's eyes, and so getting Max's attention, he points towards the screen. Looking up, Max is shocked to come face to face with an image of his sister as she defeats a strange Meowth, and is subsequently gifted a contest ribbon. So, May's doing contests now. How appropriate for someone as vain and shallow as her. Just the thought of May makes Max sick. And besides him, Maxie watches this all come across the young protege's face. Pleased to see that the boy still holds that hatred for his sister in his heart, since for all his smarts, Max is most easy to manipulate where his emotions are involved. However, on closer inspection, Max also sees another emotion buried deep below that rage. Is that grief? Huh, this will not do, since no matter if the cause is the girl herself or the lingering guilt at the Pokemon whose deaths their last clash caused, this is a distraction from Max's one and only purpose, to serve him and Team Magma. No matter, he has his ways to drive his wayward students' attention back to him. And as for the girl, her death will be a double benefit, as it will not only clear an impediment, but it will take away Archie's favorite new toy. By now the broadcast has moved on to some trivial nonsense about one of the gym leaders. And so Maxie lays a comforting hand on Max's shoulders, feigning an apology and saying that it was thoughtless of him to bring up his sister. Max shakes his head, saying that it's not Maxie's fault and he doesn't care about her anymore. Nodding, Maxie replies that in that case, why don't they go get some dinner and talk about something they do care about, like his gym battle. Max is happy to accept his offer, and so over a meal gives his mentor a blow-by-blow of the battle. Listening attentively, Max is pleased to see that at least the boy's strategic skills aren't faltering, though the encounter with Huntail already gave him that data. When they are done, Maxie suggests for Max to head to bed, since when he checked the ferry timetable earlier, the next boat to Izabi Island is first thing tomorrow, meaning that he'll have to get up bright and early. Nodding, Max agrees, and so after collecting his Pokemon, heads to his room.
The next morning, Maxie sees Max off, wishing him luck in his next gym battle, while the young son of Petalburg in turn wishes his mentor happy hunting at the Space Center. From here, the voyage is uneventful, with Max disembarking a few hours later in Sorosi Town. However, this doesn't mean he can rest, as his goal is Parika City, which happens to be on the other side of the island. For a Pokemon lover such as Max, Zabe is a wonderland, hosting a wide variety of biomes, each with their own unique Pokemon, and though he would very much like to explore them all, our hero takes the southwest route which leads him through the forested area. The forest is abuzz with life, with Max spotting several Pokemon he's never seen before, such as a swarm of Pineco from the distant Johto region. Excitedly, Max runs up to them, introducing himself and asking if they'd like to be friends, but this loud and unexpected greeting is met with an equally abrupt response, as the lead Pineco uses self-destruct, blowing the boy back and coating his face in soot. As Max removes his glasses to clean them, a familiar female voice cackles that she wishes she'd brought a camera, since that was priceless. Looking around, Max sees none other than Courtney leering at him from a bit further down the trail. Scowling, Max asks what the girl's doing here, with Courtney replying she was on the island anyway to complete an assignment, and Maxie asked her to join up with him since he has a mission for the pair of them. Max grimaces at the thought of an extended period of Courtney's company, but for his mentor's sake, he'll do it, forcing his voice to convey less dislike as he asks what the mission is. Courtney shrugs that she only knows it has to do with the Weather Institute near Fort Tree City, so they should head there after Max has his gym battle in Parika. Max nods curtly, and so the now duo head further down the road. During the walk, Max is entirely taciturn with Courtney, having not forgotten his dislike of her from Slateport, but in contrast the girl will not shut up, babbling in a sing-song voice in a way that reminds him of May, only deepening his loathing. If that was not bad enough, it seems that her favourite topics are Max and Maxie, specifically all the ways in which the former is unworthy of the latter's patronage. Finally, this manages to get a rise out of the boy, with him demanding to know what makes her so great that she not only has a place in Maxie's inner circle, but gets to judge the others who are also granted that privilege. Cackling in a way that tells Max this was exactly what she wanted from the start, Courtney jeers that she is Maxie's most trusted confidant and counselor, and the only person he shares his truest feelings with. No one knows him better than her, and some upstart brat like Max could never hope to have the depth of bond she has with Maxie. Flushing a little, Max retorts that Maxie entrusts him with the most important jobs, as well as his secret plans, so even if he tells Courtney some stuff, when it comes down to picking a reliable partner, he's the one Maxie knows he can count on. To prove his point, he rhetorically asks which of them was chosen to help Maxie steal the sub, and which of them was left behind. A question which earns Max a slap from the pink-haired girl, but it is a small price to pay for the knowledge that he's returned the favor and gotten under her skin.
From there on, the pair walk as far apart from each other as they can, and when night forces them to make camp, they each set up their sleeping bags on opposite sides of the trail. This proves to be a mistake, as while groups of humans generally present a strong enough front to ward off Pokemon attacks, two isolated human children look like a perfect midnight snack for the local Mightyena pack. The first thing Max hears is a howl, followed by the sound of many feet running. Putting on his glasses, he sees 24 large beasts covered in black fur that almost makes them invisible against the night sky. Frantically, Max yells out to Courtney, but it seems that she's out of earshot. And although he finds her incredibly irritating, he's not gonna let her get torn to shreds by a pack of hungry dark types. And so springing to his feet calls forth Blaziken, Chinchou, and Staraptor. As part fighting type and the leader of Max's team, Blaziken leaps into action, balling his fist and delivering a double sky uppercut to a pair of Mightyena, while Staraptor, not wanting to get outdone by his young foul, dives headlong into trouble with a close combat. Hanging back a little, helping nonetheless, Chinchou lobs Electro Balls into the fray, shocking some of the Mightyena and leaving them open for one of its allies to land a devastating hit. However, in spite of the trio's impressive teamwork and Max's tactical acumen to guide them, they are still outnumbered 8-1. Even when Courtney is awakened by the sounds of fighting and reluctantly joins in with her camera up, it does little to lessen their disadvantage, with it soon becoming clear that this is a fight they cannot win. Then a shadow passes overhead, and as Max looks up, he sees the Pineco from earlier leaping from the tree and into the crowd of Mightyena. Worry in his tone, Max tells the little bug to watch out, but this is unconcerned, using a super effective bug bite to latch onto the pack leader's face. And as the dark type howls in pain and runs into the center of its group, Pineco uses self-destruct again, blasting the pack into different directions, with those still standing running away with their tails quite literally between their legs. Max then runs in to check on Pineco, while Courtney seizes the opportunity to catch the strongest of the Mightyena, while it's been weakened by Pineco. As for the bagworm Pokemon, it is clearly drained from its attack, but cheers up happily when it sees the boy. boy. Confused, Max asks what it's doing here. But when Pineco looks sheepishly at Max and then down at its own blackened body, the young man gets a pretty good idea, grinning that Pineco came all this way out here to apologize for blasting him earlier. This makes the little Pineco nod, and when Max asks if this also means it does want to be friends, Pineco smiles with his eyes. This is all the confirmation Max needs, giving the bug type a hug, only to get another face full of soot as the sudden motion makes Pineco self-destruct again. Laughing, Max pulls out a ball for the now twitchy Pokemon, and when it makes no move to explode again, he gently rolls it over, tapping Pineco and turning it into red light. The elation of the new captured is marred, however, by the presence of Courtney, as now that she's caught her Mightyena, she saunters over, taunting that Pineco really is the perfect Pokemon for Max. After all, it can destroy itself on command, meaning that he doesn't have to go to the effort of burning down a whole greenhouse to get rid of it. Rounding her, Max demands to know how dare she joke about that, but Courtney just taunts him. It's a bit rich for him to criticize her actions. After all, he's the one who killed a bunch of Pokemon, innocent Pokemon who probably trusted him and loved.
You don't think I know that? Max's furious roar seems to silence the entire forest, but he is not finished, continuing in that enraged voice that it's not like he's going to forget what he's done. Every night he sees the burning greenhouse and hears their screams when he tries to sleep. If Courtney still thinks that's funny, then she can laugh away. But don't do it in front of him, since he doesn't need yet another reminder of that terrible night. Several days have passed since May, Isabel, and Birch left Fall Arbor Town, with the trio passing along Route 113. Throughout this journey, Isabel has been tense, clearly holding on to the conversation from the first night, and though May has tried to speak to her comrade about it, figuring the rapport they've built up might be enough to encourage Isabel to confide in her, the tactical commander has remained uncommunicative on the topic of her seemingly lost Mudkip. However, for better or worse, May is not a believer in lost causes, and so when she cannot get the information from the source, she turns to Birch to fill her in. Out of respect for what is clearly a painful subject for Isabel, Birch doesn't say much, though he does reveal that Isabel did in fact start as a promising young trainer under his sponsorship, beginning her journey with a Mudkip, just like May. He also divulges that not long into her journey, she fell in with a local troublemaker by the name of Archie, his tone darkening significantly at the implication. From the head of the party, Isabel growls that some trouble's worth making, and Birch can air any grievance he has with the boss when he's Archie's prisoner. However, with his usual serenity returning, Birch replies that he's no prisoner, he's here as a favor to his niece and he can leave whenever he wants. Isabel scoffs that sure he can, calling him a delusional fool, and though Birch does not countermand this rudeness, his self-assured smile gives May hope that perhaps he can back up this claim. The topic of Isabel's past doesn't come up again for the remainder of the trip, and this is good as the trio need to be able to work as a cohesive unit for the challenge that lays ahead, the desert of Route 111. Thanks to Isabel's propensity for preparedness, she has a pair of go-goggles ready for herself and May, while Birch still has the pair he wore during the trip to Fall Arbor, but this only allows the group to enter the desert. Making it to the other side is another matter altogether.
As soon as they step foot in the desert, Isabel, May, and Birch are assailed by whipping winds carrying ribbons of sand that cut like knives. Quickly, waves of welts bloom on every patch of exposed skin the trio have, with May yelling over the rush of wind that they have to turn back. Firmly, Isabel retorts that they can't if they want any chance of meeting the deadline, and so they'll just have to power through, though May can see that her redhead companion has just as little confidence in their ability to survive this inhospitable gambit as she does. Piping up, Birch suggests that they could possibly use their Pokemon to make the ordeal easier, an idea that May quite agrees with, bringing out Swampert and telling it to use Hydro Pump to blow away the sand. At once, the mudfish gathers water in its mouth and sprays it like a fire hose, creating a barrier in front of them as the wind and sand is either repelled or turned into clumpy mud which crashes to the ground before it can touch the heroes. This, however, only gives them protection from the front, and so taking her cue from May, Isabel brings out Ludicolo and Remoraid, having the former use Hydro Pump on one side, while she aims Remoraid at the other, having it use a consistent water gun. Together, they are able to create a shelter from the worst of the elements, which allows them to advance, though at a slow pace, as they are now all forced to huddle together. Even still, it is better than nothing, and it looks like the trio will be able to meet their target after all. That is until May spots a Spoink. This is notable for two reasons. First, that while they've seen dozens of desert-dwelling Pokemon, the little psychic type is not one of them. And second, because of this first fact. Spoink is considerably pale. Like with the humans at the start of this journey, its slate-colored fur is covered in cuts from the sandstorm. Though this is not the worst of it, as due to the unstable nature of the sandy ground, its spring tail is unable to find good purchase for hopping, resulting in the Esper piglet frequently falling over and being forced to physically pull itself back up to a standing position. Worriedly, Birch tells May and Isabel that unless Spoink is able to consistently bounce, it can suffer major health problems, possibly even resulting in death. This is all the daughter of Petalburg needs to hear, breaking rank and running over to Spoink as the wind whips her now that she is out of the water shield. Bending down, she picks up Spoink in her arms, resting one hand underneath the springy tail so that it has a stable surface to bounce on at last, while with the other she attempts to shield its face. She then turns back, attempting to find her allies, but in the raging storm she can no longer see them, and when she calls out, her voice is lost to the roaring wind. Knowing that staying where she is won't help anyone, she forges forward in the vague direction that the others should be, though after 10 minutes of walking, she regrettably realizes that things won't be that easy. Turning south instead, May decides the best thing she can do is try to get to the desert on her own and meet up with her companions on the other side. This is easier said than done, as without the water shield, the stinging winds make this a challenge. Though to its credit, now that it no longer has to focus on remaining upright, Spoink is able to assist with its psychic powers, occasionally using a psi wave to blow away the sand. Each time it does this, May finds herself feeling a little dizzy, but all the same she appreciates the help and so pushes forward.
Eventually night falls, and with it so does the temperature, dropping down to freezing. Unfortunately, there is no wood to start a fire with, and even if there was, the sandy winds would extinguish it in an instant, so May has no choice but to keep going, marching onwards until she finally finds herself in a seemingly calm patch of the storm. Looking up, the girl sees that is because she has passed under the shadow of an immense tower, and figuring that that will at least provide shelter, May, with Spoink in her arms, dashes inside. The interior of the tower is utterly barren, more closely resembling a cave than a man-made structure, but all the same, it provides protection from the wind and cold, so May certainly isn't complaining as she puts her back up against the wall and slides down to a sitting position. Letting out a massive sigh, she then pulls a tin of Pokemon food from her pack and offers some to Spoink, who gratefully accepts. However, it seems the duo aren't the only ones who have made the tower their haven, as at the smell of food, a pair of glowing red eyes burst to life deeper inside. Though these aren't the same red eyes May saw upon leaving Fall Arbor. Instead, they hold a more rosy hue, and as the sound of angry buzzing fills the air, she realizes that they are the rose-tinted goggles of a Flygon. Figuring that the desert dragon isn't about to let them go after stumbling upon its lair, May gets in a position to fight, bringing out the only Pokemon she has on her, Swablu. With a happy tweet that Cloudbird awaits its first order, and drawing inspiration from their last contest, May orders it to use that dissonant singing move that worked so well against Mal. Dutifully, Swablu obeys, and it seems that this really upsets Flygon, who clutches its head with its small arms, marshalling its rage and flying directly at the Cloudbird. Urgently, May tells her friend to dodge, but the dragon type is faster, slamming a steel wing into Swablu's face with enough force to send it crashing into a wall. However, the spirited songbird is not ready to give up yet, and despite its battered state, lets off another round of its song, once more driving Flygon crazy. This unfortunately also means it continues to draw Flygon's ire, and as spectral green energy coats the desert dragon's tail, it lashes out with the appendage, savagely whipping Swablu and driving it into the floor. Being a relatively young Pokemon, this is enough to knock Swablu out, and as May thanks her friend for its effort, she returns it to its ball. Unfortunately, this leaves her with no more Pokemon to defend herself, a fact Flygon seems to be aware of as it bears down upon the girl. That is until a thin blue aura coats the dragon, at which point its menacing expression becomes one of confusion. Looking down, May sees that Spoink has hopped forward and now has its eyes glowing the same color as the aura. This is clearly some sort of psychic attack, as when the tiny pig raises its arms, Flygon is sent hurtling backwards, its back slamming into the wall with enough force to dislodge tiles from the roof. One such rocky square lands directly on Flygon, striking it over the head and knocking it out. As the dragon hits the floor, May at last feels safe enough to let down her guard, thanking Spoink for its assistance and returning to her sitting position, able at last to rest now that the threat has passed. Sadly, even sleep cannot be a sanctuary for May, as her dreams are haunted by all she has lost. Max, her parents, her home. But tonight there is a new face among the roster, Ash. In her dreams they are back in Petalburg, and she is crying for him to help her. However, the Cantonian boy remains silent, turning his back on her just like that night at the gym before walking away. Urgency, anger, and a sadness she had almost forgotten about in the midst of all the other awful stuff that had happened bubble up inside May, and in that moment, nothing matters more than getting Ash to look at her, to explain himself. Running after the boy, she screams his name and grabs at any part of him she can reach, though each time her fingers make contact with a piece of her one-time companion, that part of him turns to smoke, escaping her grasp. Even when she sprints at top speed, she cannot close the gap between them. If anything, Ash is getting further and further away from her, and though she does not know how she knows it, May is certain that soon he will reach a place where he will be truly and irrevocably out of reach. With one last cry, the girl throws herself forward, grabbing hold of Ash from behind, only for him to fade away completely, leaving her alone. Suddenly, May jerks awake, startling Spoink, but even as the dream fades, the emotion it wrought remains. At first she rationalizes this as a hangover from the dream, but as the minutes pass, and the sucking empty feeling of grief does not relinquish its hold on her heart, she is forced to face a terrible truth that she knows with the same certainty that she knows her own name. Ash has left this world.
Finally, morning comes, and although May is exhausted, having been unable to return to sleep after her disturbing nightmare, she is at least pleased to find that the sandstorm has died down, allowing her and Spoink to continue their journey to the desert's edge. Thankfully, they are closer than they would have thought, catching sight of Isabelle, Birch, and their Pokemon about an hour after setting off. Smiling, the girl runs to them, calling out, though as soon as she's in range, she is met by a verbal slap from Isabelle, who fumes that May is an idiot, as she can't go running off like that, especially in the middle of dangerous sandstorms. She then continues, had the stupid child thought of asking for her help, she of course would have given it, and they could have gotten Spoink to safety sooner than subjecting it to whatever hell it and May clearly experienced. To prove a point, she gestures to May's damaged clothes as well as her new warts on her and Spoink, saying all of that was unnecessary suffering and she needs to learn to make a plan rather than always going off half-cocked. Though she doesn't like being chewed out, May has to admit that Isabelle is right, and so with a sigh tells the tactical commander as much, apologizing for her thoughtlessness. This elicits a gruff laugh from Isabelle as she curtly states that May is forgiven, and for what it's worth, she is glad that the girl is okay. She then turns her back on May, saying that they still have a ways to go, as Birch does likewise. May only pauses briefly to place Spoink down on now solid ground, thanking it for its help last night and telling it to stay safe. She then follows after her companions, though Spoink does not bounce away, instead looking longingly after its human friend. Then after a moment of deliberation, bouncing after her at a distance. A few hours later, May, Isabelle, and Birch finally make it to Trainer Hill, a tower near the southern end of Route 111, where trainers congregate to test their mettle in a series of concurrent battles. Little do most people know that it's actually a Team Aqua recruiting ground, with those who prove themselves strong being offered a place in the team. It is here that Archie awaits the trio, greasily greeting May and Isabelle before turning his attention to his prize, Birch. With a domineering leer, the Aqua boss tells the professor that he's about to undertake a very important job for him, helping him find the red orb. Pleasantly, Birch says that he's never heard of it, though Archie sneers that he highly doubts that, coming from the author of such classics like The History of the Hoenn Region, the ecosystem of Pokemon 3,000 years ago, the coexistence of people and Pokemon, and distribution of Pokemon species, National Edition. Has no knowledge of Kyogre and the method the ancient people used to calm its rage? Still in that believed tone, Birch replies that he doesn't know what to tell the Aqua boss. Everybody has blind spots in their research, such as how one might fail to look into the catastrophic consequences of flooding an entire region. Archie does not take this insult well, standing over Birch and snarling that the professor will do what he says. The question is how much he has to hurt him first. This doesn't cow Birch, however, who instead meets Archie's gaze and plainly states that he is not afraid of him. In fact, it's hard to say what emotion he has for Archie anymore. It used to be pity, but now that he knows that the bandana-clad man is doing to a new generation what Giovanni did to him, disgust seems to be the only word that truly fits the bill. May remembers that name from when Ash told her about his mentor, though at the moment she is more concerned about Birch. She has never seen him act so coldly to anyone before, though his coldness is cancelled out by the white-hot fury radiating off Archie as he strikes the other man, knocking him off his feet, while barking at Isabel to get her ludicolo out. Automatically, Isabel begins to comply, but as Birch meets her eye, he asks if this is truly who she wishes to be, genuine concern in his voice. This gives Isabel a moment of pause. It is a slight thing, but everybody sees it. And this only infuriates Archie further, with him barking at the redhead woman to do it now. At this point, her ingrained instincts kick back in once more, and she wordlessly obeys, bringing out her ludicolo and having it enact on Birch the same torture it did to Swampert. For all his self-assuredness, Birch is not immune to the pain, and so soon finds himself twitching and writhing at Archie's feet, while the sadistic sea dog plants a boot on his chest to keep him in place. However, even this does not give the Aqua boss the relief he hoped for, as Birch does not give him the pleasure of screaming or pleading, instead looking at his adversary squarely in the eye, his silent message clear: "You may have the strength to break my body, but my will far surpasses yours, and it will not bend to a thug like you."
Unfortunately, even the strongest will remains trapped within a mortal body, and eventually the pain of Giga Drain makes Birch pass out. It is only then that Archie allows Isabel to let up, as he has two grunts haul the professor's unconscious body away. He then looks around as if daring any of his subordinates to suggest his strength is not absolute, and when none do, his gaze falls upon Isabel and May, telling them to head to Rubello town, since the next contest is there. Archie then turns his back on the pair, preparing to swan away, but is stopped when May speaks up, saying she thought he said on the phone that when they met in person they'd have a talk. Barely contained rage in his voice, the bearded man inquires what exactly she wishes to talk about, with May plainly stating, "Max." This definitely ticks the Aqua boss off, as he spins around once more and asks, "What about him?" through gritted teeth. In a calm, non-confrontational tone, May says she's still waiting for the help he promised in getting him back from Team Magma. For a moment there is silence between the pair. Then, with a smirk and a voice dripping with condescension, Archie says he'll make the deal super simple for her. When she brings all 5 ribbons to his office in Lily Cove, then he'll make good on his promise. But until then, he's done listening to her bleat about her kid brother. 5 ribbons, then they talk. Got it? Stoutly May nods, and this makes the Aqua boss cackle that he's glad there's more than just hair tufts in that head of hers, before at last taking his leave in earnest. Taking their cue from the boss, the other Aqua members scatter, including May and Isabel, though before the pair can get very far, they are stopped by another grunt, who May recognizes vaguely from the battle with Team Magma in Petalburg. Face and tone neutral, she asks what this guy wants, with him somewhat nervously spluttering that he has a message for her from the guy with the meowth, but since she never came back to base, he was never able to deliver it. This comes as a genuine shock, with May having figured Ash simply ditched her, but all the same she urges the grunt to give her the message. After a pause, the grunt repeats the words Ash told him verbatim. "I have to go now, but I'll be back as soon as I can, and when I return, I will help you get your brother back. I promise." With these words said, the grunt hastily departs, leaving May to ponder on Ash's message. For all this time she thought he'd abandoned her, but now she must accept the fact that he truly cared, and was her friend all along. However, it seems that he will never be able to keep this promise, as with his demise, she is on her own again.
It takes another day for Max and Courtney to reach Pickled City, with the pair briefly stopping at the Pokemon Center before following the street signs pointing them in the direction of the gym. However, when they arrive, what they find is not the conventional gym Max has grown to expect, being nothing more than a loosely marked battlefield in the sand of Pickled Beach. In fact, if it were not for the Pokemon battle going on at the moment, Max may not have believed this place was the gym at all. However, there there is, and Max groans as he sees the challenger, that pompadour jerk from Mossdeep. It seems that this battle is already in its late stages, as this Hariyama has taken quite a beating. But all the same, it stands strong, waiting for the gym leader's wall rain to charge it. Then with its mighty hands grasp the sea lion and it suplexes it into the sand, ending the match and giving the boy, who Max now learns is named Hodge, his victory. From the other side of the field, a muscular maroon-haired man who Max assumes is the gym leader congratulates the redhead on his victory, handing over an angular blue badge and returning his wall rain to its ball. Flashing a Sharpedo tooth grin, the boy thanks the gym leader, shaking his hand and putting his arm around Hariyama, telling it that they're officially halfway to their dream. This delights the big fighter, who claps its giant's hands for joy as its trainer recalls it, then turns to leave, only to come face to face with Max. Smirking, Hodge taunts that it looks like the pipsqueak is one step behind him once again, before haughtily asking if Max even got the Mossdeep one, or if he got his butt kicked so bad he had to leave the island in disgrace. Seething, Max pulls out his trio of badges, though Hodge dismisses this with a sniff and pulling out his own, which contained 4. Growling, Max declares that just his rivals stay and watch. He's gonna get that badge right now, and he'll wipe that smug smirk off Hodge's face. However, at this, the gym leader shakes his head, saying no can do. His buddies just got through an intensive workout thanks to Hodge, so now they need some time to cool down, though they should be fit to fight again tonight, if he wants to meet up back here around sundown. This makes Hodge laugh, calling it tough luck, but that's what happens when you're a straggler. Max, however, will not take this insult sitting down, and so turns his attention back to the redhead, saying if the gym leader won't battle him, how about he and Hodge have a match? But now it is Max's turn to taunt, asking if the boy is scared. This does the trick, with Hodge baring his teeth and declaring that he's not scared of anyone, especially not some brat. Fine, if he wants to fight, he's found it.
The muscular gym leader says they're free to use his battlefield as he and his Pokemon are headed for the Pokemon Center, and Max and Hodge are happy to accept, with Max taking the gym leader's spot. The young Magma member also takes the liberty of choosing first, having Blaziken burst onto the field with a flurry of kicks that indicate its readiness to battle. Smirking, Hodge matches this with his Hariyama, declaring that this will be a battle of pure brawn, a claim Max can get behind, as he orders a series of blaze kicks. At once the Kikyavian's legs ignite, and it begins to thrust them forward with tremendous speed. But to Max's dismay, Hariyama matches this, using arm thrust to catch each blow and prevent them from doing any damage. Even its meaty palms seem uninjured, with Hodge sneering that that is because of Hariyama's ability Thick Fat, which makes fire and ice moves all but useless against it. Scowling, Max has Blaziken fall back, needing a moment to come up with a new plan now that the old one is untenable. Thankfully, Blaziken does have one other particularly powerful move, that being Sky Uppercut, and so with a grin, Max tells his partner to end things with that. Nodding, Blaziken ignites its wrist, then charges forth once more to perform an uppercut. But as with their last encounter, Hodge has a counter, this time in the form of Force Palm. Channeling an orb of light in its palm, Hariyama also lunges forward, swinging its energy sphere downwards into Blaziken's flaming fist, and seemingly creating an impasse, a stalemate in which neither party will prevail. Then, everything changes. A horrific crack rings out along the beach, and as Max looks closer, he sees his best friend's wrist bent backwards, having finally given way to Hariyama's gravity-aided Force Palm. Being a stoic Pokemon, Blaziken does not scream, but it is clearly too injured to continue the attack, and as it clutches its wrist, it leaves itself open to another arm thrust from Hariyama, which knocks it onto its back and sends it skidding over to Max. Crying out, the boy rushes in to check on his friend, while Hodge recalls Hariyama, sneering that his rival needs to learn how to make use of his Pokemon's strengths and weaknesses effectively, otherwise they're just gonna wind up getting hurt like this. He then extends a flip comb, running it through his Sanguine Pompadour as he turns on his heels, urging the kid to get his Blaziken to the Pokemon Center, since in its present state, it's not even worth finishing the battle. And just like that, Hodge is gone, leaving Max alone. Or at least he thinks he is, until the hateful voice of Courtney reminds him of her presence, by jeering that Hodge is right. His performance was disgraceful, and so long as he wears Maxie's colors, she won't stand for pitiful battlers like him. She then swans away as well, though not before adopting a poisonously sweet voice, as she warns Max that if she ever sees him disgrace Team Magma like that again, again, you won't be around to do it a third time.
From here, Max is forced to return Blaziken to its ball and escort it to the Pokemon Center alone, where Nurse Joy is mercifully able to treat its wrist, saying it's lucky he was able to get it here quickly, since if it had gone untreated for too long, it would have been uncurable. That being said, they'll have to take it easy on the wrist for a while, unless they want to do even more damage. Max promises he will, then takes a seat by Blaziken's bedside, deep in thought about what Hodge, Courtney, and Joy said to him. Max's reverie is broken a few minutes later when the maroon-haired gym leader enters the treatment room, saying that he heard the boy had come in with something serious, asking if his Pokemon are okay. Sighing, Max says that Blaziken will be okay, though they may have to delay their gym battle until Blaziken recovers. Before Max can finish his sentence, Blaziken leaps onto its feet, with a serious expression on its face as it makes a fist. Knowing his best friend well enough to recognize the passion in its eyes, Max asks if it's sure, saying that if this is for his sake, he can just use Staraptor or one of the others, since he doesn't want to see Blaziken get hurt again. However, Blaziken remains steadfast, imploring its partner to let it redeem itself, especially after that humiliating defeat. Smiling in spite of himself, Max nods, then turns to face the gym leader again, saying that he and Blaziken will be ready to fight when he is. 20 minutes later, the duo is back at the sandy battlefield, eyeing off the gym leader whose name they know is Rocky, as he explains the rules of his battle. A 3v3 with no time limit and substitutions only allowed for the challenger. Max accepts these terms, and so Rocky brings out his first Pokemon, Swinub, while Max meets it with Blaziken. At Rocky's command, Swinub shoots forward with a super effective bulldoze, and Max tells his partner to dodge it. However, Blaziken stands fast, instead igniting its leg and waiting for Swinub to get close. It is only when the Arctic pig lunges at it that Blaziken moves, delivering a swift and decisive front kick which sets Swinub ablaze. And as the furry fireball flies backwards, it crashes into the ground unconscious, proving once and for all that Blaziken is holding nothing back in this battle.
Next up for Rocky is his Glalie, with the floating ice head giving its opponent a menacing grin. However, Blaziken meets this with a cool gaze as it rushes in, hoping to make similar short work of it as it did for its teammate. Unfortunately for the firefighting type, Glalie is made of tougher stuff, tanking the first Blaze Kick, then retaliating with a headbutt which knocks Blaziken off balance. This is just what Glalie wants, following up with an icy wind that causes icicles to form on Blaziken's feathers. And as the blazing chicken attempts to charge its foe once more, its movements are more sluggish thanks to the cold. This allows Glalie to float up and out of the way of the Blaze Kick that follows, and for a brief moment, Max considers calling for a Sky Uppercut, knowing the move would be able to hit and likely take out Glalie in one shot. However, as his eyes dart to the bandages on Blaziken's wrist, he refrains, allowing Glalie to escape harm and launch a counterattack, dropping back down and slamming into the top of Blaziken's head, with enough force to send it face first into the sand. It then attempts to repeat the feat, dropping once more onto Blaziken's head. With Max's shout, the Firebird is able to roll out of the way, causing the heavy head to instead get stuck in the sand. This is just the opportunity Max and Blaziken need, with Max having his starter spin in place, while igniting its leg to strike Glalie in the face with a Blaze Kick. This sends the Ice type flying upwards, and with his confidence returning, Max has Blaziken leap up after it and spike Glalie back down into the ground with a final Blaze Kick, finishing it off and putting the score at 2-0. Nonetheless, Max can see that Blaziken is starting to tire from its 2 consecutive battles, and so suggests that it return and he can have one of the others finish the match. However, Blaziken will not hear of it, making a fist and urging its trainer to allow it to stay in. Unable to deny his best friend, Max acquiesces, telling it to bring it home as Rocky chooses his final Pokemon, Walrein.
Knowing that Walrein can be an issue if it makes use of its water typing, Max has a starter rush in as soon as the battle begins. But this plays right into Rocky's hand, with the gym leader instructing his ace to use Ice Beam. However, to Max's surprise, the target of this attack is not Blaziken, but the ground itself, turning the sandy battlefield into an ice rink. Being in motion when this happens, Blaziken is unable to steady itself, and so slips on the newly frosted terrain, falling backwards. As it falls, Blaziken instinctively extends its hands to catch itself, and seeing this, Max knows what is about to happen an instant before his friend's anguished cries fills the beach. The force of the impact, coupled with its own body weight, having shot up its injured arm. This is not the worst of things, however, as seeing its foe in a prone position, Walrein launches forward, using the new icy field to glide at high speeds towards Blaziken Blaziken and slam into it for massive damage. As the Ice Break Pokemon then readies a second pass, Max yells out for Blaziken to get up and use Blaze Kick. But to his dismay, when the Kiki Chicken rises to its feet and sets said feet ablaze, the true genius of Rocky's strategy makes itself known. As soon as Blaziken's legs catch on fire, the intense heat melts the ice it was standing on, causing the fire type to drop into a sudden puddle that extinguishes the attack, rendering it useless. Then before Max or Blaziken can act, Walrein launches another Ice Beam, refreezing the puddle, and in doing so trapping Blaziken up to the shins in a cocoon of ice. Desperately, the Firestarter attempts to struggle and break free, but against such large amount of ice, the effort is fruitless, and is forced to watch on as Walrein rockets towards it again. Leaping up this time to avoid breaking the ice, Walrein crashes headfirst into Blaziken's torso, knocking it backwards so that its head slams forcefully into the icy ground while its feet stay shackled in place. It is a dire situation, but as Walrein slides off Blaziken, a faint red heat aura begins to emanate from the fire type, giving Max an idea, with him telling his friend to try and use Blaze Kick to free itself. With the benefits bestowed by Blaziken's Blaze ability, this is enough to melt the ice boots, allowing Blaziken to perform a reverse somersault and drive a two-footed Blaze Kick directly into Walrein's skull.
From his side of the field, Max lets out a whoop, calling his partner the best, but as Blaziken pulls its leg back, there is no sign that its attack has landed at all. Confused, Max asks what gives, saying he knows Walrein's water type means that fire type moves aren't super effective, like they would be against a regular ice type, but they should still do some sort of damage. Grinning, Rocky calls Max a smart one for knowing all that, but informs him that like Hodge's Hariyama, his Walrein has thick fat as its ability, meaning that in fact it is resistant to fire type moves. This floors Max, as it was this ability that led to his downfall against his rival, but refusing to lose faith in his partner, he tells Blaziken to retreat and regroup. Using the talons on the base of its feet like crampons, Blaziken is able to run across the ice battlefield with much more ease this time. As it and Max come face to face, it is clear that their thoughts are one and the same. With fire moves being next to worthless against Walrein, they are in a fair bit of trouble, as the only non-fire type attack in their arsenal is Sky Uppercut, a move which neither feel especially confident using at this point in time. However, Rocky isn't about to let the duo take a break and confer, having his Walrein launch itself at Blaziken once more, this time aiming to end things. Knowing that Blaziken probably can't take another hit, Max instinctively calls for it to block the attack, and similarly acting without thought, the firefighting type executes a front kick, which connects with Walrein's head, not only halting the attack, but actually sending the walrus skidding back with a howl of pain.
In that moment, everything clicks into place for Max. The most muscular and developed part of Blaziken is its legs, meaning that it is also the part of it that can leverage the most strength. Rocky already realized that. That's why he built his strategy around putting Blaziken's legs out of commission. And now if Max makes use of that same knowledge, he can actually win this. Pushing his glasses up, the young son of Petalburg then grins to his starter to use Sky Uppercut. And when Blaziken gives its trainer a look of concern, Max finishes with its leg. At once, Blaziken understands, chasing Walrein down, and before the Ice Break Pokemon can regain its balance, the fire type crouches low and lets off a short, sharp kick, which catches Walrein under the chin and with an audible whoosh, sends it hurtling into the sky. No uppercut from Blaziken's fist could have achieved such power, and for a few moments the icy Walrein then vanishes from view as it soars higher and higher into the air. Briefly, Max worries that he might have killed another Pokemon by sending it into the stratosphere, but thankfully a few seconds later, Walrein becomes visible again, plummeting back to Earth at an incredible velocity. When the hefty Pokemon lands, it is with a sound like a cannon going off, as the impact makes a crater that sends sand and ice flying into both Max and Rocky's faces. Neither can see what has become of their Pokemon through this deluge, but as the air clears, they see a deep Walrein shaped hole, while in front of it, the one kick chick stands coolly, dusting a bit of sand off its shoulder, the clear victor. Recalling Walrein, Rocky congratulates Max, saying that was one hell of a trick using Blaziken's powerful legs to increase the strength of its Sky Uppercut, a claim which makes Max smile as he tells the gym leader he wouldn't have come up with it if it were not for him and Walrein backing them into a corner. Rocky beams that he was happy to help, then from his pocket pulls out a badge like the one he gave to Hodge, telling Max that this is called the Chill Badge, and that he and Blaziken well and truly earned it.
Back with May and Isabel, they are almost at Rubello Town, having stopped off on the bank of a river to have some lunch and allow their Pokemon to get some exercise. Remoraid, Ludicolo, and Swampert take full advantage of this, racing from bank to bank, while Swablu rides happily on Swampert's back. Seeing the Mudfish playing so contentedly with Isabel's Pokemon makes May wonder once more about what Professor Birch said regarding her companion once having a Mudkip. Figuring that Isabel might be a bit more receptive to discussing it now that Birch is no longer with them, May tentatively broaches the subject, starting on the topic of her own Swampert, with plans to segue into Isabel's one somewhere down the line. However, they don't call Isabel the tactical commander of Team Aqua for nothing, and whether because she knew this would come up eventually, or simply because May's false hesitancy isn't very convincing, she flatly tells the girl to spit out whatever's on her mind. Taking a deep breath, May cuts the preamble, asking what happened to her Mudkip, and in a flat voice, Isabel replies that it's dead. Archie killed it. Though May had considered the possibility of this being the case, hearing Isabel say it, and in such a matter-of-fact manner shocks the girl, with her pressing for details before she can consider how tactless it is. However, Isabel doesn't seem to mind, or if she does, she doesn't show it, being as upfront as ever, as she replies that once she tried to leave Team Aqua, and as May well knows, Archie doesn't accept resignations. Shuddering at the thought, May asks why Isabel tried to leave, and after a moment that seems to age Isabel 100 years, the redhead explains that Team Aqua wasn't always what it is today. In fact, they used to be marine life conservationists who fought against the big polluters like the Devon Corporation, and at their head was Archie, the champion of Hoen's oceans and the Pokemon who lived in them. May cannot reconcile this noble figure with the thuggish gangster she knows, and so asks what happened, and this sets a scowl on Isabel's face as she replies Giovanni happened. She never trusted that man from the beginning, but in those early days they needed allies, especially ones who had resources to fund their crusade, and the influence to help them make connections in the world of finance, politics, and media. Giovanni had all of that, and seemed to care just as deeply about their goal as Archie, taking him under his wing and introducing him to all the privilege she'd dreamed about but always been denied. And just as the Cantonian had wanted, Archie got a taste for them, growing to care more about his own status than the mission Team Aqua had been founded on. It was at that point that Giovanni taught the young Aqua boss what it took to attain such things: brutality, cruelty, and a willingness to trample anything or anyone that stood in his way. These were the types of lessons Archie took to with ease, willingly carrying out progressively more and more unsavory favors for Giovanni, in exchange for furthering his ambition, which slowly but surely became less about helping Pokemon and more about accumulating power. At first, Isabel went along with this, believing her comrade had some higher purpose, that perhaps he was just trying to lull Giovanni into believing they were spear over feather, but it quickly became clear that this was not the case, and he had simply lost sight of their true goal. Being old friends, Isabel went to Archie, urging him to cut ties with Giovanni, but to her shock when she arrived, he was there, standing at Archie's side. It was at that moment the mobster decided to impart an important leadership lesson to his apprentice: what to do with a disloyal subordinate. The act was swift and brutal, death by dehydration, courtesy of Giovanni's one-eyed Nidoking, though it was Archie who gave the order. Archie who did the deed. Horror in her voice, May asks how Isabel could keep working for Archie after that, but Isabel coldly asks what else could she have done. She'd already made herself complicit in most of Archie's crimes, so it's not like anyone would help her, and sooner or later Archie or one of his followers would track her down, and then she wouldn't just lose one of her Pokemon, she'd lose all of them, and she'll be damned if she repays her Pokemon's loyalties with the same agonizing death as Mudkip. Better to just keep her head low and do as she's told. Then at least she'll be allowed to hold on to that little piece of something that's still hers. Isabel then turns her red eyes on May, and in a firm voice tells her that if she's smart, she'll do the same, since the sooner she stops fighting, the sooner it stops hurting. However, if anything, this story has set a fire in the girl's eyes, as she declares that she's never gonna surrender. She's gonna save Max, and then she'll see to it that Archie gets what's coming to him for all the evil he's inflicted on others. That's her promise.
Isabel's response is a bitter scowl as she tells the young brunette to stop talking nonsense. A promise is nothing but empty words, and the only thing coming to Archie is further success. Powerful people like him never have to face justice, and at this point she's pretty sure it doesn't even exist. This clear ideological difference between the two women forces an uneasy silence. But before either can argue the contentious point, a new set of voices draws their attention. Looking around, they see a trio of navy blue blue-haired people swimming towards them. And when they see that they have May and Isabel's attention, the youngest of them, a girl around May's age, gives them a wave, asking if these are their Pokemon. Nodding curtly, Isabel says they are. A warning in her voice suggests that if these three are thieves, they have chosen the wrong people to try and rob. However, this coldness is met with a laugh as the girl says that she's impressed by the speed and fluidity with which their Pokemon swim, explaining that her family are traveling entertainers who specialize in water ballet. This sets stars in May's eyes, having heard of water ballet but never had gotten the chance to see it. And noticing this excitement, the girl invites May and by extension Isabel to watch them practice. Isabel seems unconvinced, clearly still in a bad mood, but when May points out that it'll help her prepare for the contest, the tactical commander relents, flicking her head as if wordlessly telling May to go before she changes her mind. However, just because Isabel's silent doesn't mean everyone is, with the navy-haired girl gushing that if May means the Rubello contest, then that means they're gonna be rivals, since she's planning to enter to test out her newest routine. May smiles that she looks forward to seeing it, introducing herself at last, with the other girl doing likewise and revealing her name is Elizabeth. For the remainder of the afternoon, May joins Elizabeth and her parents Kyle and Meredith as they run through various underwater routines with their Pokemon. It is a dazzling spectacle to behold, made even more enjoyable when May is invited to join in. To the family's surprise, May is a natural, not only at the choreography, which is understandable given her vocation as a coordinator, but also in the way she moves through the water just as effortlessly as her Swampert. Curiously, Lisbeth's grandfather Shep asks if May perhaps has any ties to the people of the water, an ancient tribe native to Hoenn said to possess great affinity for the ocean. But with a shrug, May admits that she doesn't know, having never really discussed her ancestry with her parents before their passing. This understandably puts a damper on things, though Lisbeth, ever the ray of sunshine, beams that May must be with moves like hers, playfully calling her cousin, and slipping a beaded turquoise bracelet on her wrist, which she calls a crystal mark. She then explains the crystal mark is one of the few pieces of technology from the people of the water to make it to the modern day, saying that most of it was lost to time, though it is rumored that more can be found in the fated Temple of the Sea. This twigs something in May's memory, and after a moment she remembers that this was the subject of the painting she stole the day she met Ash, and that Archie had said Kyogre lives in the temple. Information of that caliber would be far more valuable to the Aqua boss than 5 ribbons, meaning she could leverage it to make him help her rescue Max sooner. And with this in mind, she asks if the family have any clue where the temple is. With a sigh, the water performers shake their heads, saying that it too has been lost to history. But if the legends are to be believed, only a member of the people of the sea will be able to find it, though her mind is squarely on Kyogre and the people of the water. A few hours later, as the sun begins to dip below the sky, Kyle invites May to stay the night in their trailer, saying that they've got plenty of spare beds and it seems that they're going the same way since they'll be driving into Rubello first thing in the morning to register Lisbeth for the contest. May's eager to accept, though she first asks if she can extend the same offer to Isabel, not wanting to leave her alone. Meredith grins, the more the merrier, and so with her thanks, May returns to their campsite to speak with her companion. Thankfully, in their time apart, Isabel's emotions have cooled as she gets right down to business, asking if the training was useful. May nods that it was, though not only for the reasons she suspected, relaying this new bit information about the Temple of the Sea. Isabel nods that this is interesting, agreeing to spend the night with the family, and so it is that the duo return to the caravan, with May chatting amiably with Elizabeth, while Isabel stays to the periphery, feeding the assortment of water types the family has as a part of their troop.
The next morning, as promised, they all drive into Rubello town, with May and Elizabeth heading straight to the contest hall to register for that afternoon. Thankfully, registration poses no issue, with both girls being enrolled and encouraged to wait backstage until their time to perform. They are also instructed to nominate the Pokemon they will use, with Elizabeth choosing Herbuizel, while May drawing inspiration from this pick Swampert. The pair then head to the waiting area, while Carl, Meredith and Shep make their way to the stand. things. Isabel alone declines the offer, instead figuring that this time would be better spent investigating the family's trailer and seeing if they know more about Kyogre or the Temple of the Sea than they're letting on. After an interminable wait, May is at last called up to the stage, where she brings out her Swampert, and on the judge's command, begins her appeal. Reflecting briefly, May thinks back on all the people she has met on her journey, and how this performance would not be possible without them, as she opens with the move she learned from Isabel, Waterfall. At once, jets of water burst from underneath Swampert's hands and feet, sending it soaring into the sky, where it begins to spin and flip, moving through the air with the same grace it does through the water. Meredith, Kyle, and Shep all recognize these moves from their training with the girl yesterday, and applaud as Swampert executes a stunning quad axle to mark the beginning of its descent. Then, with a sudden look of determination, the mudfish goes rigid, plummeting headfirst towards the stage, which is now covered in water as a remnant of its previous waterfall. No one is quite sure what the purpose of this nosedive is, but several members of the audience wince, imagining the nasty crash that is bound to follow, only for Swampert to extend its front paws at the last second and use the force of its landing to create a powerful earthquake that splits the stage, causing two sharp peaks to rise on either side of the water starter. This impact also propels the layer of water on the ground up these peaks, turning them into waves, which swing back in on each other and break directly above Swampert, creating a watery heart with the mudfish in the center, similar to how Ash and his gloom ended their appeal. Unsurprisingly, this performance earns May a standing ovation, though the real shock comes at her score, a near-perfect 28.5 points, with the only lost marks being for damaging the stage. This all but guarantees the girl a spot in the battle round, and so hugging her starter, she heads backstage, feeling as though she is walking on air. Back in the waiting area, Elizabeth is effusive with her praise, calling that a truly phenomenal appeal, and proof positive that May must have some blood ties to the people of the water. May grins that if anything, that credit lies with training with Elizabeth and her family more than any ancient lineage. But all the same, she appreciates the praise, chatting with her new friend until it is time for Elizabeth's own appeal.
As planned, she opens with Weasel, having the Aqua Weasel fire off a volley of water pulses before using the spinning of its dual legs like a fan to blow away the watery orbs into different spots around the field. However, this is not the end, as using Aqua Jet, Weasel is able to follow the water pulses into the sky, skewering each of them and causing a beaded tail to trail behind its Aqua Jet, which grows larger with each collected water pulse. Finally, when it has all of them hanging off at the end of its Aqua Jet, Weasel spins its twin tails once more, bursting free of the watery cocoon and launching an ice beam which freezes the water solid. For a moment, the Sea Weasel Pokemon stands tall as it rides an icy serpent through the air. Then, as all things must, the ride comes to an end, with the weight of the frozen Aqua Jet and water pulses causing it to fall back to Earth. Weasel, however, seems unconcerned, staying atop its mount until the very last second, and only ejecting when the ice hits the ground, shattering into a million pieces, using its tails to soften its own landing. Weasel then touches down gracefully, and as it extends its paws to take a bow, the remainder of the ice shatters, becoming diamonds, which just sets the stage aglitter as the perfect end to the routine. This earns almost as much love as May's performance, and so it comes to a little shock when both May and Elizabeth are chosen to advance to the battle round. Due to the random natures of the brackets, Elizabeth's match is first, with her and Weasel making short work of their opponent's cumbersome clay doll, while May finds herself doing likewise to a very unfortunate Magmie, who has found itself in the worst of worlds, facing down a much larger water ground type. This results in the finals being between May and Elizabeth, and as the two friends lock eyes from either end of the battlefield, both vow to make this a finale to remember. Being the speedier Pokemon, Weasel takes the first attack, using Aqua Jet to strike Swampert before darting back to its side of the field to prevent the Mudfish from counterattacking. Thankfully, Swampert is not reliant on close quarter combat, firing a Hydro Pump, but being a master of aquatic travel, Weasel makes use of this, diving into the stream and using its twin tails to propel itself against the current, leaping out directly in front of Swampert and using those dual tails to slap the starter repeatedly in the face. This is a critical blow for May's points, with Weasel not only using its own moves, but as well as Swampert's to make itself look graceful, while also making Swampert look sluggish. Sensing victory, Lizbeth has her Pokemon use Water Pulse. But as the Sea Weasel charges the orb of water in its palm, May desperately tells Swampert to stop it. Instinctively, Swampert raises its own palm, planting it on the charging Water Pulse and using Earthquake to dispel it. This is spectacularly effective, perhaps overly so, as with the force of a shotgun, the seismic ripple blasts Weasel back, and when it lands, it clutches the shoulder of the arm that had been charging the Water Pulse, clearly having taken the full jarring force of the Earthquake. Elation and revulsion war inside May at that moment, as she realizes this might be the only way to get her 4th ribbon, but at what cost, since Weasel looks pretty badly hurt, and that's only from a shot to the arm cushioned by a large orb of water. If an Earthquake were to be applied directly to Weasel with no buffer, the results could be devastating. However, May isn't given long to think, as Lizbeth has Weasel get back in the fight with another Aqua Jet. In spite of its injury, the orange Pokemon is just as agile as ever, bursting forth and striking Swampert again and then cutting a hasty retreat. Looking up at the scoreboard, May sees that her points are terribly low, and with one more Aqua Jet likely being enough to eliminate her from the contest. However, can she really do that? And to a Pokemon that belongs to her new friend?
This question becomes much less hypothetical as Elizabeth orders a final Aqua Jet, but forcing herself to believe there must be another way, May has Swampert use Earthquake on the ground instead, causing pillars of concrete to jut up, in the hope that one of them will strike Weasel and knock it off course. Unfortunately, May has no such luck, as the speedy Weasel has excellent spatial awareness, having grown up doing performances where it must be aware of where everyone else is at any given moment. This allows it to easily dart and weave out of the way of the pillars as soon as they appear, all the while gaining speed, which tells May that even if she told Swampert to dodge or run, it would be pointless. An instant later, Weasel appears in front of Swampert, ready to slam into it and claim the remainder of May's points. It is a moment of crisis, and in it, May makes her choice for better or worse. Earthquake. It only takes a second for Swampert to execute the command, but what follows is something May will never forget. As soon as the Mudfish's hand makes contact with Weasel's snout, a massive ripple races through the Aqua Jet, dispersing it like the Water Pulse. However, unlike the first time, May sees flecks of crimson in the water, and as she looks closer, she notices the cartilage of Weasel's nose has been completely obliterated by the seismic force. Time slows to a crawl, and the daughter of Norman watches on in horror as even more blood gushes from the impact point, streaking down Weasel's chin, while the pitter-patter of falling rain fills her ears. However, there is no rain inside, and as May looks down, she has no trouble identifying the cause. Several of the water type's teeth have been blown cleanly out of its head, and now lie scattered across the stage. After a moment that lasts a lifetime, Weasel falls as well, and as its body cleaves a channel in the battlefield, May sees that its face is already swollen up like its flotation sac, being so puffy and mottled with greenish-purple bruising that no one can see its eyes for the swelling. Obviously, such an attack is more than enough to bring the battle to a close, though there is no standing ovation this time, no applause at all in fact, just shocked silence as the audience bear witness to the consequences of May's desperate act. Wordlessly and with fumbling fingers, Mr. Contesta hands May the ribbon she technically earned, while Nurse Joy rushes to Weasel and Elizabeth's side, providing emergency triage and preliminary treatment so they can transport to the Pokemon Center. Numbly, May stumbles towards Elizabeth, her voice catching in her throat as she tries to apologize, but the navy-haired girl doesn't want to hear it. Tears in her eyes as she furiously demands to know if winning was really so important that she'd do this, adding she thought they were friends. Quietly, May replies that she is far more at stake in these contests than just ribbons, so when it came down to it, she had no choice.
May hates these words, knowing how much they sound like Isabel's justifications. But unfortunately, the fact of the matter is that she could not afford to lose here and risk falling short of the 5 ribbons she needs to get Archie's help in rescuing Max. This thought weighs heavily on May as she silently turns and departs the contest hall, Swampert by her side. Waiting outside is Isabel, and when she sees the distress on her young companion's face, she approaches her. Being who she is, the tactical commander offers there's no physical or emotional comfort to the girl. Though when the two of them are face to face, she looks May squarely in the eye, and in a voice that says that she can relate to what May is feeling, tells her that she did what she had to do. Now it's time to move on. Still feeling too choked up to speak, May just nods, and so Isabel guides her towards the road, this time heading north towards their next destination. May is relieved that Isabel doesn't want to talk, and so focuses on forcing out the feeling of remorse and shame from her mind. That is until something draws her attention. It's those same red eyes from before. The same pair she saw the night she left Fall Arbor Town, though this time being only dust, she's able to see they belong to a menacing looking Pokemon with a wicked looking horn and shaggy white fur standing in the center of the road. Once again, the Pokemon only stays briefly before bouncing away, though as it goes, May at last remembers its name, Absol, the harbinger of disaster.
And that's where we'll leave things, though before we go, we do have a few things to let you know.
The next part, which will be on my channel, marks the halfway point of this adventure, so don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss that.
And remember to subscribe to Ronin, Charizard, and Plus Ultraman to keep up to date with what's happening with Ash, Meowth, and all their friends in Kanto.
Thank you for watching, and we'll see you when the journey continues.